Hey everybody, Steve here from Fitness Central. Just letting you know that we finally got in our new DIRETO Elite trainers. The DIRETO is the newest in the Elite lineup. It is a direct drive. It goes up to 14%, changes resistance, super smooth feel. And today I'm going to be opening this up and putting it together and giving it a roll.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is it definitely has some weight to it, but I guess that's what makes it so stable. And I'm opening it up here for the first time. You see we have styrofoam. Alright, so what you're going to get in the kit are the 3 legs for stability. You're going to get the parts that you need to put your cassette on, plus the adapters for either a quick release or a through axle, the mounting hardware, a quick release, and the manual. Installation is pretty easy here. You're just going to put the longer one in the center, or 2 go into there. And then when you install the side pieces here, just making sure you're utilizing the flat part towards the inside and use that hole there on the bottom, go into that hole right there. We have the legs on. Like I said, it does fold up so you can take up less room. Those 2 arms do come in. The next thing we have to do is we have to figure out what kind of cassette that you need, because this does mount directly to the cassette, and you need to have the right one that matches your bike. So for example, if you have a 10-speed, you get a 10-speed cassette. If you have an 11-speed, you get an 11-speed cassette.
Alright, so for this, we're going to go to our favorite mechanic, Brian, here, and he's going to show us what we need to do in order to make this work.
Alright, so it's going to come out of the box, set up for a regular quick release, pretty easy. You can tell it's got the smaller hole in there on the drive side, already kind of all threaded together, which is easy. We have a couple of adapters that we're going to come in the little bag here. Again, this one's pretty easy. There's a little instruction sheet on here, but you just take the adapter with kind of the small hole, and then another little silver piece kind of slides on there. And if you want to come over to this side, the non-drive side here, just kind of sets right in there, just like that. Pretty easy stuff there. If we're going to do a through axle, which is pretty easy to identify with just the larger of the holes here. We again have the non-drive side, pretty easy, just slides in to this non-drive side here, just like that. To do the drive side, we'll actually need, I believe it is a 5mm Allen wrench in the end of this here. Unthread that, give it a couple of rotations, and then this guy here has wrench flats that you can see, and that'll thread on to that drive side. I have to double check the size here. If I had to guess, it's probably a 17 or 19mm. Let's start with a 17. Good guess. So that's a 17 to kind of set that up. That's all you have to do for changing it for the axle size. Now you do need to do this before you do anything with this cassette. You don't want to put the cassette on. You're going to have to take it right back off if you're going to change the axles there. Alright, so once we have our axle configured here on the trainer, we're going to want to install our cassette. So as far as our cassette goes, you just want to match with whatever's on your bike right now. So if it's Shimano, you need to get a Shimano cassette. If it's 10-speed, you need to get a 10-speed cassette. If it's 11-speed, etc., etc. I would recommend kind of sticking with whatever gear range you run outside, just so everything feels very realistic on these trainers. It's going to be really equivalent to riding outside, so you don't want to change your gear ratio, right off the bat, unless you know you're going to do a very specific kind of riding on the trainer. So stick with matching whatever you have on there. Installing that cassette's pretty easy. So we're going to take our cassette here. We're going to line up our splines. Sometimes it's a lot easier just to kind of put it on piece by piece. This is a very precise free hub body, which is making it a little tricky getting everything lined up on here, but we should be able to just kind of slide everything on here. If it's a Shimano or SRAM cassette, I like to find kind of that big groove on there and start with that one, kind of slide everything on there. We'll get to a point here where we have spacers that go in between the cogs, so just be sure that we're paying attention to that and getting our spacers in there. Maybe look at doing a cassette, how to install a cassette video on YouTube if you're unfamiliar with this process, but should be pretty easy overall. Sliding everything on here. Getting spacers in between each one as we work towards the end. And we can. And each of these cogs is really only going to go on one way. You can't put them on backwards or anything like that. Getting down to our last couple of cogs here. Get these on in place. So we have our cassette on there. We take our lock ring. I just kind of preload it on the lock ring tool here. Slide everything on there. Thread it in there. Start getting snug. Grab your wrench. Kind of just crank it on there gently. There is a torque spec, but just go easy by hand. And you have a cassette on there. Ready to go.
Now that we have the bike hooked up, it just locks right into the gears there. Now, you are riding an electronic trainer. As the resistance changes, it gets harder. As it goes downhill, it gets easier, and you have to shift just like you have to a regular bicycle. Very quiet. Really, the only noise you're hearing is the wind blowing as you're pedaling on it.